The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right. It looks like we're getting a couple people hopping on. Welcome, everybody that's joined us thus far. We're going to wait about a minute or so for to allow folks to hop on. So bear with us, and we'll get going here in a bit. All right, so in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you again, everybody, for attending this webinar. I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Alejandra Del Toro, and I am the project coordinator with Empower Idaho. You'll see here that we have listed some emails of our staff. So if you have any questions or having any tech issues, feel free to reach out and we will help troubleshoot that. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Empower Idaho, just wanted to share a little bit about what we do. We offer provider trainings, education, and advocacy for adults with behavioral health conditions throughout the state of Idaho. We are here today with Dr. Olivia Ngadjui, and she will be presenting Understanding Telehealth Strengths, Risks, and Best Practices. We also have Fran here, who is our ASL interpreter. If you will be using that service, what you can do is click on the little arrows on the side of her webcam screen, and that will enlarge her image so you can view that a little bit better. All right, and then to give you a quick overview with our control panel, just so everyone knows, you are all muted right now, and we ask that any comments or questions be put in the questions drop-down box. We also have a copy of the slides under the handouts tab, and you can download those PDF files. Okay, so I'll go ahead and send it back to you, Dr. Ngadjui, if you want to get going. Thank you all.
Okay. All right, so this is Understanding Telehealth Strengths, Risk, and Best Practices. Just really want to thank Empower Idaho for allowing me this opportunity. And like Alejandra said, I'm Dr. Olivia Ngadjui. My pronouns are she, her, and you can see the pronunciation of my name, Ngadjui. Say it really fast.
Dr. Olivia, sorry to interrupt you, but it doesn't look like the slides are showing up expanded. So I wonder
let me fix this. Let's see.
Yeah, not in presentation mode.
So when I share screen, is it this button? Nope, it says make presenter. Nope, push the same button. Sharing. Okay. Stop sharing. And then, okay. So then let me try it.
Awesome, there you go.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right, thank you for letting me know. Yes, okay, because this is all I saw on my screen, so that was super helpful. So yes, I'm Dr. Olivia Ngadjui. I want to give the heads up that I am coming from the perspective of a counselor/counselor educator because I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of Idaho. I'm also a proud counselor educator in the state of Michigan at Western Michigan University. So today, I want to let you know that you're hearing this perspective from that of a counselor and counselor educator. Please know though, that in the mental health field, there's a lot of overlap. So I do have colleagues that might agree with me for sure, but there may be some differences. So that's why I want to give that disclaimer. All right, so we're going to start out with discussing what telehealth actually is. To be honest, we've actually been doing telehealth for a good while. Telehealth actually was written about in research in the 1800s or so. If my memory serves me correctly, it would be 1879, where we talked about this need to use telehealth or some electronic or digital way to provide medical services to people without making physical contact. So when we're considering that, we're saying that people don't always have to be face-to-face to receive services. And that's something that you can open your mind to understand that with counseling, it's reality. So we can actually have telehealth counseling. And that's what we will be discussing today. In the counseling field specifically, when someone says telehealth, we know that we're talking about telehealth counseling. But to broaden this, again, want to mention that we are talking about telehealth counseling in this. And potentially, we've all heard telehealth because there has been a pandemic that started last year. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And then when the time comes, I have a timer set. I'll answer all questions as needed. There's no such thing as a dumb question, okay? All right, so then the strengths of telehealth is actually surrounding convenience. And then socioeconomically, there's some convenience and sensitivity there too, because you're not required to leave your home and it doesn't necessarily require travel, depending on if you have to access it at a library or in a parking lot. Because I know at Idaho State University, the great thing happened. They expanded the Wi-Fi and internet so that it would be available a bit further and people could actually pull up to the parking lots to access the internet in their cars. So we know that another strength of telehealth is going to be, again, in not needing to be in physical contact with people, especially when we consider those who have extra health reasons and have extra health considerations, especially during the rise of COVID-19. We've learned that a lot of people are more vulnerable. You have people that are maybe immunocompromised. You have people who may have adverse and serious breathing difficulties before COVID-19 came about last year. And so this is really helpful for those populations. So yeah, so as a counselor currently using it in practice, I've listened to many of my clients note how helpful it is still in comparison to in-person sessions. I actually have clients who before last year, they preferred online video or phone sessions. And so again, those both are considered. That's the degrees of telehealth. Telehealth doesn't necessarily need to be an in-person session or an actual video session. Okay, so the risk of telehealth are pretty, I haven't necessarily seen many, but I will say that as we use telehealth these days, what's become more clear is that it's hard to keep and protect confidentiality in the home when people live with others. So that would be the only risk that I would really talk about, how important it is to maybe use headphones. And I'll talk about that in a little actually, but knowing that there are other people around you. The world gets smaller because now the session is in your house or the session is in a place that has other people. And then also another risk could be internet or phone service connection. Sometimes if the internet connection isn't strong, then potentially you've run into really having to lean in to really understand what the other person is saying. It just kind of messes up the feel of the session. Because again, with telehealth counseling, I've been able to have some really great sessions. I actually was sharing this earlier, but I had two clients, their parents reach out to say, and these are young kids because I happen to be a counselor who works with clients as young as 3 into their 80s actually. But I had my younger clients tell their friends that they really enjoy working with me, saying that they've been learning a lot from me. And imagine these are kids who are not teens who've been able to make it through telehealth for the past year. The rise of COVID-19 actually changed some things where we were actually meeting in person and we had to move into having telehealth sessions where I was able to get creative. We did a lot of fun things to help them still be engaged. And for me, seeing that email today, it allowed me to know that it's been paying off. So again, the risks are going to be associated with the phone service connection. So potentially if you're doing a phone session, then knowing that you may not want to be in a noisy space, or you may not want to drive under trees because that could disrupt the connection as well. And being able to still find a place where not that many people are going to be around or people that you trust are around. So then the best practices, you heard me mention this a bit earlier. I'd recommend using headphones. Headphones, if you can find some, and typically they're now sold at the gas station. I actually saw some, but that would help you keep your sessions a bit confidential and help because the thing that we had before using telehealth counseling last year was noise machines, right? You can put a noise machine outside of the door and that would keep people from hearing you. Something else that you can, oh, my office just went dark. Give me 1 second. Okay, they're motion censored. I guess I was too still. So something else that you can actually do is pull up a YouTube video that has like white noise. And that's something that you can put near the door or near your walls to keep people from being able to hear what you're sharing. That's actually a practice that I recommend and I've had to do in certain cases when I've had to be in maybe a hotel room and, you know, handle my sessions. And then I guess one that I will recommend continuously would be counselor shopping, or in this case, therapist shopping, because again, I'm a counselor, but there are many other mental health therapists out there in the realms of psychology, in the realms of social work that could benefit you as well. So being able to counselor shop and make sure that this person is engaged and you feel heard, seen when you're talking to them. And I use those heard and seen with a grain of salt because I recognize that these things actually potentially just mean that you feel understood, okay? So also you wanna fix your schedule so that you know that you'll be on your own in a space during your counseling sessions. So being able to say like, okay, my home is usually busy around this hour. Let me look towards finding a time frame where I know that people may not be there, if you can. And then another piece I'd recommend would be having a fidget or something to help you focus during your counseling sessions if necessary. because being at home can be distracting during your sessions, potentially because if it's at your home, you can be distracted by the tiniest things. Oh my gosh, I really left that right there. Oh, I need to clean that. Oh my gosh, is that really right there? I could move that. Those things, like, again, we're bringing the sessions into our home now. So it's a change of scenery. You're not necessarily in your counselor's office anymore where you know that you potentially are in someone else's space. You're in your space. So I really recommend a small fidget, and it could be anything potentially. I immediately thought about like a penny or a keychain, but something that will ground you. And when I say ground, I'm saying center you so that you can focus on your session. So of course that was pretty simple. And I do have my timer going right now, but are there any questions or comments that you have for me? And you can ask me anything actually to help you understand telehealth strengths, and then the best practices, even if you want to hear client stories or of course with confidentiality in mind, I can share to support this event for sure. But yeah, that was really quick. So I can stop sharing my screen and then we're all here. Are there any questions for me?
All right. I don't see that any questions have come through in the chat box, but again, we encourage you to click on that drop down in the control panel and you can type in those questions for us to answer. And then also it sounds like we really can also make this a discussion point to talk about telehealth, right? So feel free to join in on that.
Oh, okay. Okay, I can't see the video.
For the questions, were you able to access those?
Yes, I see them. This is great. Okay.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, so are we comfortable saying names? I see a question and I see that it says TBH platform. So I just want to make sure. Okay, yes. So Jim, I just would like you to elaborate a little bit more. Yeah, for sure. You can definitely explain it. So are we able to allow Jim to explain this verbally?
Yeah, let me give that a shot here. Right. Sorry, everyone. I'm working from a laptop versus a huge monitor, so I have to expand a couple of things here. So let me go ahead and give that a shot for you, Jim.
Oh, there we go.
Awesome.
Yeah, I typed that out, then I sent it. I'm like, that was probably a very confusing question after I sent it. So.
Oh no, I just don't like to assume. It's great. I just wanted to make sure I understood. So for sure.
Yeah. So like one of the things I'm looking at is, is providing clients, providing the individuals with option, the choice, telebehavioral health or TBH is what I was referencing there. Or face-to-face, or a combination of the two. And and one of the things I'm concerned about is how can we incorporate all of that into informed consent and make sure they're aware of the risks and the benefits of each one, and then ensure that they are making an informed decision of how they would like to approach their sessions.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I'd recommend being as forward as you can in your informed consent. And for everyone, I just want to acknowledge that an informed consent is a document that your therapist will give you at the beginning of starting services with you. And it will outline all of the treatment that you receive, the different things that the therapist or the mental health professional may want to let you know about their different policies and things of that nature. So yeah, Jim, I definitely recommend just being as thorough as possible and then leaving room to actually discuss that with your clients. So asking them questions of, okay, so how are you understanding what I've mentioned about this platform? Or how are you understanding what I mentioned as far as the strengths and risks of being face-to-face and vice versa? Because then that way you open the door to understand where the person is per se. And potentially if they're making an uninformed judgment, then you may be able to pick up on that more instinctually and provide more context, you know?
Perfect, thank you. That helps a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, for me, I say like discussion is everything. So before thinking that you understand what a person is saying, just checking in and saying like, okay, I'm hearing that you're saying this, or I'm understanding you in this way, and then checking in with them. It's something that I do in my sessions with both children and adolescents. And then sometimes I'm able to do that with adults, but to say like, hey, so can you tell me what you think you understand from what I'm saying? Or, hey, can you tell me what I just said? Because you'd be surprised. It's kind of like the telephone game. Someone may may say something completely opposite of what you are trying to what you're trying to say. So
Thank you.
of course, thank you for asking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I see a question about whether or not telehealth will continue to be covered by insurances. For me, that's somewhat of a question outside of my realm because I don't get to make the policies. But I might say that you never know. There's more research that is happening that is allowing us to see the benefits of telehealth therapy, and there's more talk about it. Of course, there's going to be multiple sides to every topic, but potentially the more research that we get to talk about the benefits, that typically impacts the insurance companies to move forward or to decline situations. So I know that's not necessarily a full response, but again, there's been a lot of talk about the benefits of telehealth counseling. And for me, I think about the reach that it provides because in the state of Idaho, I'm aware of the population demographics, and I can say that I have clients that are in smaller towns who don't have access to counseling in their smaller towns. But with telehealth, I've been able to say, hey, I'm here. And that's potentially why I have decided that I'll remain licensed in Idaho for a lifetime because I want to provide that support and representation. Okay, do you have recommended verbiage? I hope that answered the question. If not, feel free to poke back or write back to me. Okay, do you have recommended verbiage for a clinician's informed consent form? For example, backup communication in case platform. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm definitely down to consult for this. So the question is asking for recommended verbiage surrounding clinicians informed consents, like the risk with telehealth. And then also backup communication plan in case the telehealth platform or internet fails, resources in the client's own area, procedures if the clinician can't get a hold of the client, etc. I'm definitely down to consult about this because this is something that it may look different for everyone. Depending on the circumstance, of course, with clinicians, we do have the contact information for our clients. So that's usually a best practice for me. If something happens with our platform, let's say that you're using a HIPAA compliant something through Psychology Today or therapy notes or something like that, knowing that the procedure will be that I would call or they will call me via my Google Voice number. And that's something that's been tried and true because sometimes it just doesn't work. Sometimes things happen. Sometimes clients, their computers break, or our computers decide that they can't take all the extra pressure because the pandemic has allowed us to really rely on our technology a bit more than usual. So I say in any case, just to be thorough as possible, I'd say to really focus on this aspect of confidentiality. So knowing that now confidentiality changes for your sessions. Now you don't necessarily have as much autonomy to protect your client's confidentiality because they're not in an in-person session with you. So again, mentioning those pieces of, hey, like knowing, please like try to find a way to be in a space that does not have other people, or if you do have to have people there, make sure that they're people that you can trust. If you don't have that choice, being okay with being in a car if need be. But knowing that even if it's listed, the way things happen, you have to be able to be flexible to be able to discuss it. So it's a little troublesome, but for sure, like I said, like if you wanted to talk after this, feel free to reach out to me. I like to talk. I like to communicate and connect and provide support as much as I can. When streaming becomes an issue, what are the concerns with switching to a direct phone conversation, which makes it better than a bad telehealth connection? I say that the concerns, it depends on the person. For me, like I said, even before last year, I had clients who just wanted phone sessions. So for me, again, the recommendations are that the client is in a place where it's just them and they're in a place where there's no one else around them, as much as they can do. But for me, I'll say that when I'm centered and focused in my sessions, oh no, it did it again. Just like now, when I'm centered and focused in a circumstance, I can take in a full space. So I've been able to be on the phone with a client and hear that their children are coming at the door or are knocking on the door. So recognizing that it's all going to be up to you and what you feel most comfortable with. And I'd say that, if you've never done something, you could potentially push yourself to learn and become equipped with it, because that's what telehealth did for a lot of us last year. So yeah, like it's possible. I haven't seen, for me, the only concerns I say is being around people that they don't necessarily trust or they haven't talked to about those situations. And in those cases, another best practice that I will recommend is a code word. So, and I've made code words with clients to say, okay, if someone comes that you don't feel comfortable with, when you're talking to that person, if they interrupt our session, just say the code word and I will disappear from the screen. And I've literally been in a session and like moved from the screen, like maybe fell to the ground or something weird. I'm pretty quirky like that, to make sure that I was honoring my client. So yeah, I'd recommend a code Word. And then on your end, as far as confidentiality, depending on where you're doing your sessions, making sure that if someone comes around you while you're doing a session, close your laptop if you can, close the application if you can. That's why potentially it's in the clinician's best interest to use headphones as well, because both sides of the pandemic told us that many of us were doing sessions from our homes. So if you lived with someone, or if you had thin walls and lived in an apartment building, you have to be conscious as well. Because depending on where you provide services, the town could be really small. And I actually, during a piece of the pandemic, I lived in a small town in Pocatello. So, you know, you just never know. Your client could potentially know your neighbor, could know the person that you go and get your sandwiches made. It, like, the world becomes very small. And that's what we want to do. That's why it's really important for us to protect the confidentiality of our clients as best as we can in these cases. Okay, I'm reading another one.
This is Alejandra here, just using my audio. If you would prefer to communicate your questions verbally as well, instead of typing it out, just send a quick message saying, hey, can I get unmuted? And I can definitely do that for you.
Yeah, and is it okay if I share? So I'm reading about the experience of a clinician who's been doing telehealth via phone only. I just want to get permission. If not, I can say that, yeah, it's pretty difficult to, again, provide services over the phone. Like, you do lose this aspect of seeing your client and being able to pick up those different body language pieces that um, you may get to experience during an in-person session. But I will say, like, it's pretty great that you were able to up your self-care, because that's not, like, anything that you miss is not a reflection of you in your work. And I can just really tell that you're doing a really great job and really trying your hardest. What I would recommend is being able to say, so I wonder what you feel in your body, or what's happening for you in your body. That's something that's been super helpful over the phone sessions that I've had, because a lot of times you can't see, but you can hear, potentially. So these questions about our somatic awareness have been really helpful, especially in leading deep breathing, but also, yeah, but it's pretty cool. So a certified clinical trauma professional, yep. And so I'm someone who focuses on trauma as well, from the littles to the olders as well. So yeah, I'd say, like, really leaning into the somatic awareness has been a really big help for me in that case. At first, it was pretty scary to start, because it was like, oh wait, usually when we see clips of therapy, everyone's in person. And, you know, depending on the clips that you've seen, I've seen clips of Gloria, everyone's sitting there and talking, and the clinician's writing. So it just takes some of that those earlier signs of, you know, therapy away or counseling away. But yeah, I hear you. It's not easy, but also it can be super beneficial. And recognizing that, you know, depending on your stance in providing support, recognizing that you don't have to be so hard on yourself. So if you get it wrong, then that's still grounds for you to have discussion in session. So that's why for me in my sessions, I tend to say a lot like, I could be wrong, but is this something that's happening for you? Or I heard some wrestling, like, what's coming up for you? Or is that you? You know, so being okay with missing the mark, because potentially you don't miss the mark. These are things that I'm really quirky about in training future counselors. It's okay to mess up. It's okay to not be able to recall something quote by quote. You can look it up, and it's okay, because you can potentially have another session to discuss it, especially if your client stays with you throughout the whole session and shows up for the next one. You can follow up about any questions that you may have. What are some other questions? And yeah, okay, you're welcome. Yeah, because I'm over here trying to think, what else have I been able to do via the phone that's been super helpful? So the somatic awareness, being able to maybe even ask clients, you know, what do you see right now? Where are you right now? Do you feel comfortable sharing that? If you do, let me know. Like, what are you looking at? And then when I've led mindful exercises, being able to say, like, you know, focus on one thing, one moving thing, one living thing. Usually that's a tree or something. But finding those ways to really, for me, I make sure that before every session, I center, I ground, and then I'm there. So anything that's happening for me, and potentially I have my own counselor. So I'm really there, and I'm eager too, which is quirky and nerdy of me. I know, but I love it. So yeah, I hear you, and yes, self-care is super important. Are there any other questions? I will say there's something else that was a nice thing to see, was being able to use EMDR over telehealth. So I am trained in eye movement, desensitization, reprocessing, and it's a trauma technique, or it's a technique for those impacted by trauma. And it's something where you have bilateral stimulation, where your client either taps themselves to restructure their neural network. And when we're talking about restructuring neural networks, we're saying that potentially we've been walking around with a certain lens of how we've seen life. And it's either unhealthy or healthy. But with EMDR, we can actually restructure it so that it's healthy. And you can have a physiological release in using EMDR. So it's a pretty cool tool to use, but that was something that I was able to use over video telehealth. And it was pretty cool to see it be successful. And I had something else I was thinking to share. Yeah, so I thought it was very interesting, but so with the pandemic, I was able to actually change jobs. And I had some clients who, you know, were like, okay, do you think we'll be able to do in-person sessions? But then I actually had clients who said, hey, I like this. I don't have to drive anywhere. I don't have to, I can just stay and maybe potentially have on like comfy clothes and things like that. Or food is available for me. So those have been some of the success stories that I've heard from clients where they don't necessarily need an in-person session. I do have some clients who I have made it a journey for me to go and travel to where they are and to provide in-person service. That's something big for me. So that's something I will continue to do for my children clients as need be. I'll show up maybe every 3 months or so. But yeah, not everybody needed it. So it's just very interesting to think about how this is really changing what we think therapy and counseling should look like. It's pretty amazing. I actually do my own personal counseling is actually, it shifted during the pandemic as well. So it's been a hybrid. When it's been safe, we've been able to meet in person, but the majority it turned into it being telehealth, and for health reasons and for consciousness of caring for the other person, for sure. Are there any other questions? And I'm definitely still thinking about the phone session help. So I wonder, maybe even being able to check in with the client and say like, you know, I heard your voice seems as if it changed in tone. So I think with phone sessions, I'm able to really lean into the here and now, and to do a lot of, you know, just verifying like, I kind of heard your voice do this. I wonder what's happening there. Or is that, you know, you started speeding up in your speech, you know, bringing those things to the front of our sessions to be discussed. And it's been super helpful, especially in times when I'm able to say, hey, let's pause so that you can take a deep breath. It's okay. So, are there any other questions?
I actually have one for you. I apologize if you already covered this and I missed it, but I'm wondering if telehealth appointments sometimes cost less than in person, or if the cost is typically the same. Like, what have you seen in your experience?
I've seen a variation because I know that some people just do telehealth. So I've seen a variation, and potentially I wonder sometimes when I've seen those shifts if it's because of the, like, telehealth is new for some people. So they may be charging based on their experience and saying like, hey, I'll charge this much for in person because I've had a longer time doing that, versus, you know, doing telehealth. Telehealth is new as of 2020. But for me, I charged because I know that I was doing telehealth before the pandemic. Like, I literally had clients who said, I just want to meet over the phone. And so I had a really good time, like, doing some phone sessions with a number of clients. And they talked about how helpful it was during our termination sessions and things like that. And it just really restored and challenged my thinking of what counseling was supposed to be. So, yeah, I think that because potentially the hope is that many of us are charging based on our experience. So if you're seeing differences in the amounts, potentially is because it's experience based. So yeah, in person, that's something that I can say that I started out doing. It was, you know, that's how I'm trained. But then when it came to actual telehealth, that was something that was, yeah, because I moved to Idaho in 2018. So I actually started that in 2019. I had clients who just wanted to talk on the phone, or that's what they could do, based on not having internet, or, you know, it's different reasons for different people.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions? And I want to make sure. Yeah, and I'm trying to think about things that would be most helpful. And potentially telehealth is more, like, telehealth counseling is more comfortable because you don't have to worry about your clothes. So there's all these jokes and, you know, comedy features about it, but people will be like dressed really nice up top and have pajamas on. Or for me, what I've been able to do, I'll have like business attire on, but have on some comfy slippers. So knowing that you get to actually, with telehealth, you get to actually be in a comfortable setting. So the hope is that that takes off some of the pressure. Because remember, at first we were traveling to our counselors or our therapists and saying like, okay, the office looks like this. Oh, they have this in their office. But now you can grab your tea, depending on how your clinical environment is, like what you've decided on with your clinician. For me, clients are able to eat. Clients are able to, we do a lot of active movement, because that's one thing I will say about telehealth, to just sit there, especially if this is someone who is a child or adolescent, attention spans are something that are even troublesome for me. So for younger children, I've been able to do a piece of like having us just stand up and wiggle if we need to, or playing Simon Says. And Simon Says is pretty funny in the house. I remember having one session over telehealth where my client was about 5, and they were so excited for me to close my curtains. Simon Says, close your curtains. And they would like scream really loud, like, oh my gosh, because I had sunblock curtains. So once I closed the curtains, it would be completely black. And my client would be on the screen like, oh my gosh. So just finding ways to make it active in recommendation. That's the recommendation that I have for you. And then considering that potentially your client may be in a space where they are unable to move and things of that nature, but finding a way to lean in with them about their interests and what's going on for them to keep them engaged. Because again, it's really hard to be in your own space and do counseling on the other side. It's one of those situations where you could see like for a family session this week, there were flies that were in my client's house. So they were both like noticing that there were all these flies flying about. And even for me, I've been on the other side and had like fruit flies or gnats flying about because I have a lot of plants. And I'll say like, you know, I just want to pause for a second, and I'll literally try to like move the fly out the way. So recognizing that, you know, movement is okay, as much movement as you can do, depending on the needs of your client, but maybe pushing yourself to step out the box of what the session would normally look like. But I'll say for me, even when I was meeting in person with clients, we still did movement. So, and we found ways to incorporate the movement, even if it was as small or as big as possible, because it could literally be just allowing your eyes to move, or, you know, blinking your eyes, but something to allow the person to really engage with what's happening with their body, but then also connect that sessions don't have to be us just sitting down. Now, again, that's in consideration of the needs of your client, for sure. But I say really push it, because with telehealth, it's hard to look at a screen all day. And then on the phone, it could be a little different. Potentially, I have clients who've taken walks while we've been in session. So, or clients who said like, okay, I'm going to sit and I'm just going to allow myself to be in this space around my house or something like that. So kind of opening to more than just the traditional sit, talk, and write sessions, like really challenging yourself with that. And depending on how you're able to get creative with your sessions, could even play games, or if you're using, depending on the platform you use, if you're using a video platform for telehealth counseling, allowing the client to share their screen and share something that they're open to. So that's something that I've been able to do with my child clients. They share the screen at some points, and we watch something that they've been watching on YouTube. And then I'm able to connect that to their goals. So we sit there and watch a video about pouring resin or a video about, they have all these YouTube videos. The culture now is very interesting for our children. But there's like Darman videos where Darman is actually covering topics that are pretty tough to discuss. So I have a child client who really enjoys watching Darman videos. And so what I do, we watch those and then I connect those to the goals and ask questions to see like, okay, how are you understanding this? How does this relate to what's going on for you this week, like you mentioned? So just really being able to recognize that with telehealth, it may be a bit different, but it's also something that you could really push yourself. Like, imagine if you shared your screen and you showed them like a draw up, like and this is maybe the professor in me, but a draw up, like a mind map of all the things that they talked about. Imagine how engaging that would be. That's going to reach that person visually. Or potentially, you know, depending on like your skill usage via phone, being able to say like, okay, so today we talked about this, this, and this, but then I wonder what's something that's really, really still on your mind. So finding ways to really push that engagement, and then really, again, pushing for that self-care, as someone mentioned, because your patience is going to be something that really helps you and really allows you to provide your best service as a clinician. And then on the other hand, for clients, recognizing that, you know, have a fidget if you need it, but be in that space because it's your space. Like, you're seeking these services, so you deserve the utmost care. And if you notice that something's happening where maybe, you know, the connecting isn't there, counselor shop. Counselor shop, I say it a lot. Like, what works for me and what works for one client may not work for you. And that's okay. You don't have to just stick with the same person just to do it. There's options. There's different platforms. There's Inclusive Therapists, which is really, really nice. It's a nice platform across states. And then there's Psychology Today. And that's one that's been around for a very long time. But recognizing that you can push and you can have some options. So, and then if you don't have options, being able to reach out and maybe to your state board, because usually state boards for mental health licensure, they have like a directory. So that's a place where you could find info on different clinicians. Potentially, you could find like the history of them as well. You could see if they've had different things like reports filed against them and things of that nature, like how long they've been practicing, how long, where they've been practicing, and things of that nature. Because not everybody, usually to be listed on directories, it costs, depending. On Inclusive Therapists, they actually have the option where they will provide support for marginalized individuals. So if you're a marginalized clinician, they will provide you a sponsorship. And then depending on your affiliation, and when I say affiliation, like depending on if you're a counselor, if you're a psychologist, essentially you could get a discount to be listed on Psychology Today. So, because I know that the American Counseling Association provides a 6-month discount. And I would have to do some digging to see whether or not this is student access or what, but I've seen that advertised a good amount in our journal. So yeah. Any other questions? Ooh. Oh, I'm not sure about that question. Alejandra, it says, I wonder if we get certificates of attendance for this webinar.
Yes. Thank you for asking that. So we are more than happy to email you a certificate of attendance. This specific training is not eligible for continuing education credits, but something that states that you attended, and if you want to submit that to your accrediting board, if you're looking for that continuing education credit, we can definitely email that to you. So I will make note of your name here and be sure to send that over to you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you have another person who just said they would like a certificate, please, as well.
Thank you. I will write down that name as well. Okay, so it looks like we have a few coming in. So I think, let's see here. I will also type my email in there as well. I'll write down all of these names, but in case I miss somebody, please go ahead and email. It's adeltoro@janus.org, and I'm pasting that to in response to Autumn's question, so you can find that there.
This is so cool. This platform is pretty organized. Oh, what? Oh, man. That's going to be something. I don't know. I think I'm going to have to start. Maybe I'll get something to tap.
It goes back to your comment about, staying active instead of just sitting in front of the screen, right?
Yeah, and I can be a very still person, and that's something that I've really practiced. So that's going to be very interesting to work with. Like, okay, it's cool though. I mean, but yeah, I'll get a little stick or something to tap. Yeah, so I hope I've answered in depth. I'm trying to think about what more I could offer. And I will check to see.
I think a majority of these just asking for that certificate. It looks like we are getting close on time, so if anybody else has questions, again, feel free to follow up via email, and we'd be more than happy to forward that to Dr. Ngadjui. I also want to quickly note that we send out evaluations via email, and that's really helpful for not only the presenter, but us at Empower Idaho, so we can see what's going well and see what areas and suggestions that you have for us. We really value that feedback, so if you could take a moment to fill that out when it is sent to your email, we would highly appreciate that. Oh, and yes, my email. So it's D as in dog, E as in elephant, L as in long, T as in Toro, which is my last name, ORO@janus.org. And Janus is JAN as in Nancy, and it's double N, so JANNUS.org. Okay. All right.
Yeah, and like I said, if anybody wants to talk about things, after this, I'd definitely be open. I'm also on Twitter, Dr. Olivia Ngadjui. So even if you tweet me and you prompt a question, I'd respond to it. I've been really getting outside my comfort zone and tweeting more. So, yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you everyone for attending, and thank you, Dr. Ngadjui, for a really informative session. I know for me personally, it's a lot of helpful information as I do my telehealth visits. So much appreciated, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.